You're watching a film you've seen before. You know exactly what's coming. The music swells, the scene plays out, and without any decision on your part, your eyes fill. A tear runs down your face. You blink. You feel slightly embarrassed, slightly confused, and then the moment passes. Now think about what just happened. Your body produced a controlled secretion from lacrimal glands above your eye sockets, altered the salt composition of the fluid to something chemically distinct from the fluid your eyes make every second of every day just to stay lubricated, and released it in response to what exactly? A story. A fictional story you already knew the ending of. No physical damage, no foreign object in your eye, no smoke, no wind, nothing. You cried because of a feeling. And here is the thing that should stop you cold. No other animal on Earth does this. No other species produces emotional tears. And in over a century of serious scientific investigation, nobody has been able to fully explain why we do. The answer isn't one thing. It never is. There are layers here in evolutionary pressure, in neurochemistry, in social signaling, in the strange overlap between sadness and beauty that makes humans unlike anything else alive. Each layer is more unsettling than the last. Let's go. Start with what people assume. Most people think crying is just an overflow response. Emotions get intense enough. The body loses control, tears spill out. Crying is weakness made visible, a child thing, something you grow out of. Every part of that is wrong. Crying in humans is not an overflow. It is a system, a precisely regulated, neurologically complex, biochemically specific system that does things no other mammal's tear production does. William Frey, a biochemist at the Ramsey Medical Center in Minnesota, spent over a decade in the 1980s, chemically analyzing human emotional tears versus reflex tears, the kind your eyes make when you cut an onion. The difference is striking. Emotional tears contain significantly higher concentrations of prolactin, adrenocorticotropic hormone, and leucine enkephalin, an endogenous opioid. Reflex tears are mostly saline. Emotional tears are biochemically loaded. They contain stress hormones your body is actively expelling and a natural painkiller your brain produces under duress. Frey's controversial conclusion: crying is a form of excretion, like sweating, like breathing out. Your body is removing chemicals it built up under emotional stress and doing it through your eyes. Now, let's be honest about something. The excretion hypothesis is real but incomplete because it doesn't explain the triggering mechanism. It doesn't explain why a piece of music, or a specific memory, or a stranger's act of kindness fires the same system that fires when you're in physical pain or social danger. Oren Hassan at Tel Aviv University published a theoretical framework in 2009 arguing that emotional tears evolved specifically as a social signal, one that is nearly impossible to fake at will. You cannot produce emotional tears on command the way you can produce a smile or a word. The signal is involuntary, which makes it credible. Hassan's argument: tears are an honest signal of vulnerability and bonding intention. When you cry in front of someone, you are demonstrating that you trust them enough to be seen in a state of lowered defense. The tears physically blur your vision. You cannot run well when you're crying. You cannot fight well. You are, in the most literal biological sense, making yourself temporarily helpless in front of another person. And the research backs it. Ad Vingerhoutz at Tilburg University, the world's leading researcher on human crying, found in a 2009 study across 37 countries that people consistently report feeling more connected to, more sympathetic toward, and more willing to help someone who is crying versus someone expressing the same distress without tears. The tears do something the words cannot. Here's something else that almost never comes up. The anatomy of human crying is unusual in ways that don't get enough attention. All mammals have lacrimal glands. All mammals produce basal tears to lubricate the eye and reflex tears to flush out irritants. But humans are the only species with a lacrimal drainage system that can be overwhelmed by emotional tear production. When you cry hard enough, tears don't just run down your face. They back up into your nasal cavity, which is why you get a runny nose when you cry. No other mammal's anatomy sets this up the same way. The structural difference isn't accidental. It suggests the human lacrimal system was modified over evolutionary time to accommodate a volume and frequency of emotional tear production that other species never developed. The plumbing changed to handle the load, which means the load increased, which means something was selecting for increased emotional crying over hundreds of thousands of years. Now, let's tackle the biggest mystery here. Why does beauty make us cry? Not sadness beauty, a perfect piece of music, a landscape, a moment of unexpected kindness from a stranger. This is the data point that breaks every simple theory of crime. Vingerhoots calls this kama mutta, a Sanskrit term meaning moved by love, a specific emotional state characterized by a sudden feeling of connection or elevation, often triggered by witnessing selflessness, sacrifice, or transcendent beauty. Kama mutta reliably produces chills, goosebumps, and in many people, tears. Neuroscientist Robert Zatorre at McGill University showed in 2011 that music that produces chills activates the nucleus accumbens and the ventral tegmental area, the core of the dopamine reward system, the same regions activated by food, sex, and drugs. The brain is treating aesthetic experience as a survival-relevant reward. And crying in response to beauty may be the overflow of a system that is simultaneously experiencing something too large for the emotional containers. It usually uses a moment of perceived meaning so significant that the body has no other response calibrated for it. This is where the story stops being just about tears and starts being about something much larger. The sociologist Jonathan Turner at UC Riverside spent decades analyzing the evolution of human emotions and proposed that hominins living in small, high-stress social groups over the last 2 million years faced a unique evolutionary pressure. They needed to form and maintain bonds with non-kin at a level no other primate does. Chimpanzees cooperate mostly with relatives. Humans cooperate with strangers, with future generations, with abstract groups. To do that, the emotional bonding system had to be amplified far beyond what other apes have. Turner argues that emotional crying is one of the clearest markers of that amplification, a communication channel for internal states so nuanced and socially critical that the body developed a specialized, involuntary, chemically distinct output just to transmit them. You cry because you are a social animal that evolved past the point where words were enough. And here is what makes that genuinely strange. You are sitting alone, watching a film. There is no social benefit to your tears in that moment. No one sees them. You are not signaling vulnerability to a potential ally. You are not expelling stress hormones from a real threat. You are responding to a simulation to fictional characters in a fictional situation as if it were real, as if it mattered, as if the bonds at stake were your bonds. The human nervous system cannot fully distinguish between a real social event and a convincing representation of one, which means the capacity for crying evolved for real social bonding and became so sensitive, so hair-triggered, that story alone can fire it. That is not a glitch. That is the system working exactly as intended, extended into a domain it was never specifically built for. You cry at films because your brain was built to care about people. And it never learned to stop caring just because they aren't real. You're sitting in that theater again. The music is swelling. The scene is playing. You already know what's coming. Your eyes are filling. Your vision blurs. You can't run well right now. You can't fight well. You are, for a few seconds, physiologically helpless. Your lacrimal drainage system overloaded, stress hormones leaking from your eyes, your dopamine reward system firing as if something genuinely important is happening. And maybe it is. Maybe the system isn't confused. Maybe it knows exactly what it's doing. The most sophisticated social species in the history of life on Earth, sitting alone in the dark, crying at a story. Not because it broke, because it works.